Hello, everybody. It's the Jinn&Tonic show. It is Sunday. It is 1800 p.m. UTC, and we are going to be talking about Islam. It is Sunday, the 22nd of May, and I think it's a perfect evening with heavy thunder clouds hanging over us to talk about Islam from a more light-sided point of view. Now, I'm a little bit tired, and I understand how people are saying, why are you always telling people what an atheist is? You know that I am in a, well, more serious discussion at the moment with somebody who believes that the word atheist should be changed and atheism should be filled with content and things like that. And I think this is so counterproductive. And this is why there's always people still saying, well, okay, we have the atheists who claim that everything here by chance, and the atheists make this claim and atheists make that claim. When an atheist does not make any claims. And this is just the one thing. It's like a philatelist. A philatelist collects stamps. And that is all the information you have about the philatelist when he does not do something. So not collecting stamps is a philatelist. Do you see how ridiculous it is? And doing a lot of this not collecting stamps is then aphilatalism, which makes it even more ridiculous. So guys, please, an atheist is simply somebody who does not believe that gods exist, and there is nothing about evolution, there is nothing about cosmology, there is nothing else there. It is just that an atheist does not believe gods exist, and that is it. I don't know why it's so difficult. The other thing is we're talking about Islam. Now, Islam is yes, we understand it's highly complex. The thing that we need to understand, the most important message here is, whatever we say, we are not criticizing all Muslims. Okay, most Muslims are better than their God, but we need to appreciate there are those that are not better than their God. And what we are trying to do is objectively, in other words, we're not trying to sell another religion, we're not trying to sell another God, we're not trying to sell anything. We're just here to answer, to correct, to question, to whatever, anything to do with Islam. This is what we're trying to do. And we're not trying to make Muslims look bad or something. I know that it's quite funny for me to have a person believe that a flying donkey can take somebody from Mecca to Jerusalem and all this in a couple of seconds, and then go up to heaven and the skies. And this is all very strange to me, and I don't believe that ants can talk and things like that. So whatever it is, it must be strong, that keeps the people there. And we talked about it last time, how people get indoctrinated, and this is what actually surprised me, that there were not more comments about what Alasa was posting last time, where Seth Andrews was reading this letter. And that was quite amazing, how this guy in Malaysia was saying how Muslims are trying to make one word, this Allah, make it exclusive to Islam, which is not, it's just God. You can't do that. You can't say God is now exclusive to the UK. Nobody outside of the UK and outside of Christianity is allowed to use the word God. That's ludicrous. But this is exactly what is happening in Malaysia. So there, yes, I am bashing Muslims because they're making stupid claims. But it's not against all Muslims. Okay, this is the stupid thing about Islam. And today I'm hopefully going to hear from Walid is here. Then I'm hopefully we're going to hear from him about one of the many miracle claims, which should be like really fascinating to hear. So we're talking about Islam, and we're looking at it because it is affecting everyone, because Sharia is making the claim that it is the most superior system, the most superior political party. Islam is a political ideology, and this is the point that we need to remember all the time, and we need to repeat it again and again and again. There's no point people saying, oh, but we love Jesus and things like that. That's not the way to go. Nobody cares about Jesus, because the Jesus in Islam is a different Jesus than the one in Christianity, and that's it. So Let's be serious, and I welcome any Muslim who comes here and chats with us. And I think every Muslim can attest that we're not mean, we're not anything, we're trying to be objective and we're trying to be factual, and that is the point. And that is what the whole show is about, to explain Islam and its contents. Not to make it look nice, not to make it look bad or anything, just to try and be rational about it. Okay, the way that it works, we have a couple of things. I always do the video of the week, misconception of the week, and then some news and blah, blah, blah. And from this, we will go and I'll explain just now why I'm not. Then we're going to talk about the miracle, and then we're just going to have a discussion, whatever. Now, I was threatened. I was going to be like subjected to corporal punishment or something by Jeremy if I ignore this, because the video of the week that he suggested was one by intro, or in introverted or introverted smiles, which is called Every Moderate Muslim in the World, because he did a response to this. And I'll link, as always, I'll put a link in the description box so you can watch it later. It's I think 24 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. He reacts to somebody who makes some claims about Muslims, and I think everybody should take a look at this to see who claims what they are in regards to moderates and not. Another video of the week that I had originally selected was the Jinn series, which, because this is the Jinn&Tonic show, which shows different types of jinn. So I'm going to link to both of those. If anybody wants to know something more about the jinns and why this is the Jinn&Tonic show, go ahead and watch this. There's also a little bit longer, and it's some funny Muslim servant of Allah or something like this, or servant of Islam. The misconception of the week that I have chosen today is something because it's actually quite fascinating, because Al Jazeera made a 360 view of the Dome of the Rock available to people. And what people are, this is the misconception, people normally think that the Dome of the Rock is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this is not true. What most people don't realize is that there are two buildings on that plateau. And in the one corner, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is an active mosque. In the other one, in the middle, you have this beautiful monument, which is called the Dome of the Rock with the golden roof. So one is the Al-Aqsa, one is the Dome of the Rock. Now, this is the story where Muslims believe that the standard narration is that Muhammad went and flew on his flying mule, went to Jerusalem, tied the mule outside, went inside, prayed a little bit, came outside, and then went off to heaven. But neither one of these existed. So the Dome of the Rock was built around, well, sometime it was 692, sometime around then. And the Al-Aqsa Mosque itself was built around about 821 or something around there. So neither one was available when the Muslims say Muhammad was around. So nobody really knows where he flew, where he tied his mule, to where he went inside to pray. So you have all sort of apologetics now saying, well, the mosque doesn't actually mean mosque, it means something else, it means the place, and no, he didn't really tie anything, he just let it stand there because it's quite sad. So there you go. This is something that people need to understand, that there's two buildings there. One is gray, and one is this one with the beautiful golden roof. And the one with the golden roof is apparently where Abraham built. This is a whole long story. Sacrificed his son, and it's not actually a mosque. It's actually more of a ritualistic kind of a building. And the Arabic on the sides is not actually from the Qur'an either, which is a lot of people make this claim. So this is quite funny.
But the Hagenist
question, sorry.
But the Hagenist question goes even further than that, because he asks the question, why was it built so many years after the Muslims took over Jerusalem? You'd think if they had conquered a city and they knew that their prophet had got on this winged donkey and flew there, they would have built their temple more or less within the first caliphate's rule. Why wait so long?
Well,
It's the
see,
question to think
yeah,
about rather than actually answer, I think.
but this is, of course, you realize this is your mistake, right? Because you're being logical.
I'm being what they call a revisionist now, according to the Muslim societies.
Yeah, this is true. Just in case people don't know, there's different groupings looking at the Quran, looking at Islam, and one of them are the revisionists who are looking at the historic documentation or evidence before they allow anything to be entered into Islam. And if you look at that, well, then that's exactly what GP said. You said you can't take it seriously that Muhammad actually lived in Mecca, and definitely not in the 6th and 7th century, because none of it makes sense. So it must have been much later and much further north. So this is the whole point.
Did I tell you that my mother went to the Holy Lands and she had a Jewish tour guide? And they went past the Dome of the Rock, and the Jewish tour guide told them, "Don't tell the Muslims, but it's really a cistern for where we used to flush all our rubbish away."
They would, wouldn't they? Okay, that's a little bit of a ribbing right there. Okay, so what I want to talk about first of all is okay, I've already said I'm a little bit. I find it strange that Alasa's letter read by Seth last week has not received any kind of comments, because that was so brilliant. Okay, let me first go. Why does Slavomir hate stamps so much? He is not a philatelist, but clearly an anti-philatelist. Exactly. He's against collecting stamps, otherwise he doesn't like and love dragons either. Oh, I forgot to mention all of those. Yeah. The one on golden roof is a symbol, and valid. Yes, I have not forgotten. That's why I introduced it already, and the title of the show today is the numeric miracle. No. Come on, I forgot it last time and I felt so bad, so I'm not going to forget it again. So definitely not. And why I was laughing earlier, I don't know if you realize when he signed on, his avatar, his moniker was that of an Arab person with a turban on. Oh, there you go. This one with the blue dress, and then a thick beard, and then tolerance written everything. And this was my submission for the Draw Muhammad Day competition. I didn't win anything. Yeah, I had two, tolerance and freedom, where I took one photo of what is it called? Androgenic, or something like that guy, and I added a the beard and then the writing on top of it. And I had to laugh about that because he took my pictures for the Draw Muhammad Day of tolerance and freedom. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to mention before we get to what it is, I want to mention the site of the week, because I just realized on Twitter when I was there to announce the beginning of the show, another page nobody needs and nobody has waited for. It's yet another Quran site. And it's not as nice, as intuitive as the one that Rationalizer built, and it feels clunky in comparison, but it does contain more useless information. And the site of the week is it's called Quran Wikipedia or Quranpedia, Quran Wiki or something like that. And it's okay. You go and take a look at it, and tell everybody what your personal opinion and impression is when you see it next week. Okay. Oh, there it is. What is it? Islamic Encyclopedia. No. This is something different. This is the Islamic Encyclopedia. No, that's brilliant. That has a real, this is deep knowledge and everything. I'm talking about a stupid page, and I don't have it anymore. I've closed it. It's Wikipedia. You can go to Twitter and you will see it there. Adnan Rashid is following it. I think this is QuranWikipedia.com. This could be the right one. Yeah. And now, anyway, I'll put it in the description box so everybody can see it. I don't want everybody to run off now and go and look at QuranWikipedia.com. Then what is quite funny is the collapse of groups, because everybody's talking about Brexit, in other words, the Britain exit from the EU. And I always ask myself, how does that work? Can Muslims do the same? Is Daesh, is this a Daesh exit, something that they are putting themselves outside of Islam at the moment? Is that what Muslims are saying? Is this ISIL exit, ISIS exit, something like that? But I think it's so funny because UK wants to leave the EU, okay? But now Scotland wants to leave the UK, and then Inverness wants to leave Scotland. And we have the same situation in Germany, where, for example, Bavaria wants to leave Germany, or Catalonia in Spain, and so on. So is now every person entitled to their own country? Like every Muslim has their own version of Islam? Is every Isilist individual or something like that? It's quite.
Most Scots don't want to leave the UK.
Groups is what I call them.
Most Scots don't want to leave the UK, and they don't want another referendum either.
We have Walid, we have Secular. Welcome. I think this is the first time because
Al-Baghdadi doesn't want us to leave the EU.
Most Scots don't want to leave the UK. they don't want another referendum either.
This is where I'm going to shut up anyway before I start talking about Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, or anybody else. Walid, do you want to go and tell us about the miracle that you have investigated, which is the 19 miracle?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. I thought that you was going to investigate it.
Oh, no, I have. I've done videos on this. I've done a whole lot of things, but everybody's tired of hearing me talk about it, so I thought somebody else should.
Maybe it's a misconception, but I will talk a bit about it. Not about the miracle, but about the group who believes in this 19 miracle. So, Rashid Khalifa. Yes.
Hang on, are you going to tell us what it's going to be about?
No, because I did not research it. I thought maybe you will talk about it.
Ah, okay, because I thought that you are going to look into it and then talk about what it is, the whole thing, where it comes from, where it originates, and what the whole thing is about. Okay, then let me do a quick intro.
Yes.
What happened in the 70s, there was a guy, a Muslim, and he thought that he had now the answer to everything. And then this was in Phoenix, Arizona, and the guy was Rashid Khalifa, and he translated the Quran and managed to put himself into the Quran as a prophet. So he managed to translate it so that it meant, you, Rashid, are now responsible for this and this and this. The other thing that he did is he said he put the Quran through a computer. What that means, I do not know, but this is what he claims, and he says what came out is the number 19. This is like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. The answer is 42, and Rashid Khalifa came up with 19. Why does he come up with 19? Well, he says that there is a sentence in the Quran in, what was it, 75, 76, 74, somewhere around there. It says, and above it are 19. This is just a random sentence, and it says above it are 19. This is totally out of context. There is no context. Muslims have been trying for 1,000 years to provide a context for and above it are 19. They haven't managed. And that is why Rashid Khalifa then said, well, I have found the context because the computer told me that above it 19 refers to the structure and fabric of the universe, that everything is 19. Because it's quite obvious, we live in a universe with 19 galaxies, and each of these 19 galaxies has 19 stars with 19 solar systems, and every solar system has 19 planets, as we can see, and every planet has 19 moons. It's quite obvious. So there you go, it's 19. Then he goes and says, well, there is further evidence, because if you take my name and you put some letters, you assign them some value, you come out with 15,825, and this is divisible by 19. So there I have now proven that 19 is the fabric of the universe. That's how ridiculous it is. And this is now something that some people believe, and we've had Edib Yüksel on the show here trying to sell us this 19. There are videos about this where he ambushes I forgot the name now. Dr. Skeptic, the editor of the magazine, the Skeptic magazine. And he ambushed David, the head of the American Atheists, David Silverman, and he sat with them and tried to make it look as though he was invited, even though he wasn't. He just sort of hung on while there was some team asking them some valid questions, and he just stuck around. There you go. So that's it. So now, Wally, this is now.
Can I add a little bit more to this, Fab?
Sorry, GP?
I'd like to add a little bit more to the 19 for you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
It got totally tranced by Joe Smith when he was doing a debate with another Muslim over the authenticity of the Quran versus the New Testament. And the Muslim scholar was saying how 19 was this proven miracle of the Quran. And Joe Smith pointed out that the Ottoman Empire had about 13 different versions of the Quran, which they had to pick one for future reference. So that sort of like put the air that the Quran is not a stable manuscript. It has been slightly altered over the decades. He then went on, Joe Smith, to point out that the Quran that all Muslims have in their homes right now wasn't actually written until 1924 and wasn't canonized until 1968 by the Saudi king.
No, it was canonized 1918, and it's the so-called 1924 Cairo version.
Hold on. Is there evidence for this, or is there historical evidence for this, or?
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of evidence for it. I'll catch up with that in a second. But what he was also said, 19, the mathematical theory, only works in this modern version. It does not work in any of the others because there are letter changes and word changes and meaning changes which abrogate the 19 theory. So he said it's obviously wrong.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Okay. About Rashid Khalifa, he claimed to be an apostle of God. He claimed to be a messenger of God. So the scholars in Saudi Arabia had a consensus, and they ruled about that he have to have a death penalty. So he was killed by a terrorist. He was stabbed to death, Rashid Khalifa, because he claimed to be a messenger of God. So Edib Yüksel also believes that Rashid Khalifa is a messenger of God, a new messenger. And he also deleted two false verses according to him, 9:128 and 9:129. So if you read Rashid Khalifa's translation of that of Edib Yüksel, you see that there's two verses missing, the last verses of Surah 9, Surah Tawbah.
Did Edib Yüksel officially say he was a messenger of God, or did he just say he came to revive?
No. Rashid Khalifa, he claimed to be a messenger of God. Rashid Khalifa, he's a follower of Rashid Khalifa. But when I watched his interview with Leslie Hazelton, he said that he had a vision like Prophet Muhammad, something like that, you know. I don't know, but he also wants to claim that he's a messenger of God, but there's no clear evidence for that. He told Leslie Hazelton that he also had the same vision as Prophet Muhammad.
Can you hold on? The question was whether Edib Yüksel said himself that Rashid Khalifa was a prophet, or whether this is only
No. It is in his book. That is a clear belief. They believe that he's a messenger of God. That's a clear belief. He also said that he's the one who criticized the Hadith, the Sunnah, and he criticized him by saying that they only believe that Prophet Muhammad is the last messenger of God. I have his book, The Scholars of Islamic Reform, and he believes that Rashid Khalifa is a messenger of God. There's evidence for it. So he believes that there is a messenger after the Prophet Muhammad. You can ask him, by the way. And I don't know which evidence he has, but I told him 2 years ago why Rashid Khalifa is a messenger of God, but I don't know why.
It's sort of like the Ahmadis, how they accept Mirza Ghulam Ahmed as a prophet, right?
He's not a prophet. He's a messenger. So I don't know. He doesn't believe that he's a prophet, but he believes that he's a messenger of God, not a prophet. So,
well, when you say messenger, I get confused because I hold messenger to be higher than prophet, right?
No, because in the Quran it is that the Prophet Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, but he has his own theory that a messenger is someone different from a prophet, something like that. It is different from the Sunni belief. So he believes that Rashid Khalifa is a messenger of God, not a prophet, and he believes that his message was this kind of 19 miracle.
It's similar to the way Sufis view the awliya, the concept of awliya, and how they view that their peer have a lot of like divine authority over matters, you know, divinely gifted authority over matters. Like for example, in my particular family, we subscribe to a specific Sufi. And he had this title called the Qutbul Irshad, which means like this man who comes every 100 years, who brings Islam back to like Prophet Muhammad's quote unquote Sufi ways. He died in 2000 or whatever. So like it's a similar concept, but I think this is more common than we realize. I think Rashid Khalifa just happened to be famous in the mainstream because this guy that I'm talking about, he's not mainstream famous. He was just famous in his own little communities in parts of South Asia, So,
yes, I have this link you can read. This is of his website, Masjid.com. They had the masjid, but when he was assassinated, they closed the mosque, this Quran-only mosque. It's a sect, they call them the 19ers, So this is the link to the website, and they claim that Prophet Muhammad was not the last messenger. So there's enough evidence for that,
Are the 19ers all Quranists?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually want to know the difference between the 19ers and the submitters.
The submitters are the 19ers because they are the same. They are like Rashid Khalifa called himself a submitter. Well, it is a translation of a Muslim. So Muslim in Arabic is a submitter. So the submitter, actually, they are the 19 Muslims. They're 19 Quranists, but you have also other Quranists, by the way. Yeah, hello?
Okay,
yeah.
We're listening.
Yeah, so the submitters are this kind of Rashid Khalifa group, this sect of Rashid Khalifa. Yes.
It's interesting because I can't, sometimes it's so hard to tell the difference between them. They have so many debates among themselves,
Yes, Quranism, if you go to Quran only Islam, you have so many interpretations of the Quran. Like we had this doctor in Tunisia, what is his name? Muhammad al-Tabi. He believed that alcohol was permissible and even prostitution. So there was a big discussion in Tunisia, and many Salafis and other conservative Muslims, they wanted to assassinate him. His name is Muhammad al-Tabi.
There's a lot of these discussions going on where people are reinterpreting and retranslating the Quran, and it's not very difficult to do because it's so vague and ambiguous anyway. So,
well, no, sometimes they change complete meanings, like Surah 4 ayat 34. Like it doesn't say hit her, it says avoid her. And even progressive Muslims in the 21st century, progressive Muslims attempt to redefine it into an LGBT-friendly Quran. I mean, have you guys heard of this thing?
Yes. Yeah, there's all sorts of things. I mean, look at there's alcohol really is not prohibited in the Quran. So
even prostitution,
the same as music. Music is not prohibited in the Quran. Yet it is being interpreted as being such, and then it's very easy to go and negate this. And then exactly as you say, there are efforts to go and now whitewash it to make it compatible with today's LGBT movements, or LGBTQ it is now. So this is quite hilarious when you look at all the attempts of trying to make it fit into the 21st century.
And it's very symbolic that that it just shows that the early scripture, because they don't say we're reinterpreting it. They say that we're going back to the original interpretation because Muhammad was LGBTQ friendly. That's what they say, and it shows this desperation of 21st century Muslims to really like reconcile. I mean, this is something that I focus on a lot. I really focus on like debunking American Muslim apology. I really focus on it a lot, and I see this a lot. I see a lot of trends. Like me and Introverted Smiles lately have been pushing out a lot of content, and even the Pharaoh, on Muslim feminism and how these feminists say that Islam is feminist and the first feminist movement of all time. And they go around saying this kind of bullcrap. But really, I think I told Lalo Dagash this in our talk, is that like what they really are is they're feminist first, Muslim next, and they try to reconcile their Islam. They try to adapt their Islam to their feminism instead of adapt their feminism to their Islam, right? So. But like just this desperate adaptation of one principle to like your religion or whatever, like it kind of shows like how flawed the religion is to begin with if you have to kind of ignore the scriptures. I mean, I also wrote another. Have you guys seen the Twitter hashtag #ex-Muslim, because like it's been trending a lot lately,
of course.
And then like Muslims have been trying to like troll it. And this one, I read an article on this recently, just a Twitter or conversation between a girl and I, where she said, you can't call women lesser than men in Islam. It's just not true, It's just false. And I sent her like 2 hadiths. I sent her one where Muhammad said that women are intellectually and spiritually deficient because their brains are malfunctioning. That's why there are two women equals a man. I sent her a screenshot of Qur'an, Surah 4, Ayah 34, where it says you can strike her. And she says, well, if you misinterpret that, of course you're going to get the wrong idea. And I'm like, what other way is there to interpret it? Are these Shakespearean metaphors? Like, how desperate are you? I mean, and I'll post the article in the chat, but like, it shows the desperation and how ignorant she is. And she's not like this conservative hijabi type. I mean, I censored her picture out and her Twitter handle out in the final product, but like she wasn't. She was like very what we like to call the moderate, kind of observes it moderately and all that stuff. And it kind of shows the ignorant. It kind of shows that they close their ear and say la la la, I can't hear you. Islam is perfect.
Well, let me ask you a quick question, Secular Brownie. Like before I forget, do you think these types of movements, these different interpretations, like the LGBT thing, do you think it's good for integration, or do you think no because it's too dishonest?
It's good for their integration, it's good for their following, it's good that they're trying to make it work for themselves, but for a larger cause, like what we do, we expose the dark alleys of scripture because we want all the Muslims to reinterpret or reevaluate how perfect the scriptures are. Because every time there's a terrorist attack, Muslims go around saying, oh no, it's not the Quran. Quran's so peaceful and beautiful. But they need to admit to themselves that no, these scriptures have dark alleys, and we as a Muslim community have to kind of interrogate these dark alleys, and in the future generations condemn it. But they don't. They say the scriptures are good to begin with, right? So now you have someone who instead of prioritizing progressive values first, he prioritizes scriptures first. He's going to read the scriptures, right? And then he's going to see from the scriptures that, oh, these progressive values they're trying to make it work with, they're not true. Scriptures say, gays and this and that, homosexuality is haram, but everybody's calling it perfect. So this is the perfect word of Allah. So now they go around thinking that, gays should be stoned, or they might want to join ISIS, some of them. They might see that women are inferior because Allah made them intellectually deficient. It's dishonest on a larger, more macro scale. So it's good in some ways for them and these LGBT Muslim societies. I mean, some LGBT Muslims, they really want to make it work, and I respect that. They really still want to hold on to their identity. It's good for them, but on a grander scale of Muslims being persecuted by ISIS in Saudi Arabia, or even closeted like queer people who are in Muslim families who go through severe amount of depression in the U.S. and they get disowned by their family. Like, we need to discuss like this issue. The same way the Christians.
Yeah.
Same way the Christians discuss it. We discuss it with Christianity and homosexuality. We discuss it a whole lot.
Exactly.
But we're not honest about it. But
while you're on this, I'm just trying to keep it in blocks, because now we're talking about a different area. And TJ, now come on, I mean, there's no fixed time or anything. This is not school or class. Everybody appreciates what you did, and I actually thought you were so exhausted from last time you didn't make it. So, but what I like to do, Secular, do you see, or have you looked at, if you're looking at the interpretation of the Quran, what happens with miracles? How do these people, if they go and reinterpret LGBT issues, how do they now go about the claims that Rashid Khalifa and people like that made in the 70s and 80s, like Zindani and those who came up with all these funny miracle claims in the Quran? Have you heard anything about that?
Well, miracle stories, for example, like the prophetic claims. There's two ways people go. So in episode 9 of my channel, I discuss intelligent Muslims and how they reconcile with the bullshit fairy tales of the Quran, right? So one is Mehdi Hassan's talk with Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins said, I respect you, I know you're intelligent, I know you don't believe in the flying horse. Mehdi Hassan said, yes, I do, because miracles do happen. And then there's the other that calls it a metaphor, because it's very convenient to just call it a metaphor. It's some literary metaphor. It's not literal. It didn't really happen. It's all dreams. It's all these poetic stories that Muhammad told, to really kind of show like symbolic stories of morality and conviction and commitment. They go into literature of it. They have a Reza Aslan reading of it. That, oh, it's all metaphorical. And then there's the other, like Mehdi Hassan, who believes that it really happened because, Quran says this. Hey, miracles do happen. Maybe science didn't catch up to the idea that miracles can happen. Some of them hold on to that belief. So yeah.
Earthian, do you want to comment on any one of those, or are we just cutting in too quickly? Because I'd hate to be the one, to invite people in and say, come on in, and then everybody's talking, and nobody gets a chance. Okay, there's no comment coming from there. I see the mic is still muted, so whenever you feel like cutting in, do so. I just wanted to know if there's any other comments on these miracle claims.
Yes. I have a YouTube video describing Quranists about the many interpretations, etc. You can find this link here. So you can watch my presentation. I made it a year ago. So.
Okay, sorry, I don't quite understand. Is this still part of the 19 miracle?
Yes, it talks about Quranism and also a bit about the 19 miracle and Rashid Khalifa's group.
Okay, should I link this for people to watch later?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm just thinking, is there anything else?
Well, there's I think there's another miracle. Was it like it says benefit and what was it? I can't remember it, but the opposite benefit, I forgot the word. 50-50 or something like that, and that's been debunked. Apparently, it says benefit 53 times, and also that it says day 365. I can't remember how many times it says day, but it doesn't say 365 times anyway, and it wouldn't prove the Quran's miracle anyway.
Because it misses out a leap year.
No, it's based on the lunar calendar. There's no 365 in the Islamic calendar.
No, the thing about the miracles that gets me is the miracles, apart from this 19, the actual ones in the Quran, they're all supposed to be divine revelations from God. And I just can't get my head around how anyone can imagine God would be so determined that Muhammad had to know that flocks of birds carried bits of pottery and bombarded elephants with it. I mean, that is such a silly story. How can anybody believe it?
Come on, slapping a corpse with a piece of steak revives it. I mean, please, does it get more ridiculous?
No, there is just so many silly stories.
That's it. No, it's sheer desperation.
But it's all supposed to be divine revelation. Now, at least in the Old Testament and the New Testament, you had some like original miracles, walking on waters and things you wouldn't expect. But slapping beef burgers on people is like, please, meh.
Okay, anything else before we hand it over to DJ? Nothing else. Brilliant. Okay, TJ, do you want to give us a quick summary and then carry on with your second part?
Summary of what I did last week, or just do you want me to?
Yeah, just as a quick intro to, because there's always new people to know what you're talking about.
Okay. So yeah, I'll open the presentation just a tad bit later. Then I'll just go through like a brief summary then, or do you want me to actually use the slides?
No. Just a 60-second intro,
Okay.
and then just to know where you left off and where you're picking up today.
Okay, so basically, I start off with the Islamic conquest of India. Basically, the preliminary attacks were mainly done by sea, during the times of the first four caliphs. They didn't meet with any success. Then Muhammad bin Qasim came in the early 712 and basically led the first successful attack in India. Took away thousands upon thousands of Hindu girls as slaves, and came back also with the head of the king of that province and his wife and some members of the royal family. They committed Johar, which is basically they set themselves on fire. The next character I talked about was Mahmud Ghaznavi. Came from Ghazni, which is in present-day Afghanistan, and he said in his own memoirs why he came to India. It was for plundering and to convert the infidels to Islam. He led 16 campaigns against India, so I didn't have time to go into all of them, obviously, but he was the first one to extend Muslim rule into mainland India. So while bin Qasim was able to get to the frontier parts of India, he was the one that actually worked his way into central and mainland India. So the main thing with Ghaznavi is that he was able to make Muslim rule last in India, and Muslims were there to stay. Next character I talked about was Muhammad Ghori. Same type of deal with Ghaznavi. He just basically built upon what he had done. I didn't mention that last week, but I think he invaded India 18 times. So he won out to Ghaznavi. 17 times he was able to be repelled, but on the 18th time he was able to make it through, and he put to death Prithviraj Chauhan, who was the Rajput king at the time. And this is where the term Hindu Kush comes from, the mountain range. That's where, according to legend, it's supposed to come from. Is that after Prithviraj Chauhan was blinded and taken back with thousands of slaves, that many of them perished within that mountain range, and that's where the name comes from, Hindu Kush, which means Hindu slaughter or Hindu kill. Ghori died, and unfortunately he left no heir, so his slave Qutbuddin Aibak took over and established the Delhi Sultanate. And then his dynasty, the Mamluk dynasty, was pretty uneventful. It was just him who was the main guy. Then I got into, I believe it was the second part of the Delhi Sultanate. If I can quickly, I forget the name of the dynasty. I believe it was the Khilji dynasty, and that was probably when I would say, from what I understand from looking at the numbers, that's when the most devastation occurred. The Delhi Sultanate was the worst period in terms of body count, but it was during Khilji's period that was the worst. And his policies basically, he just led to inflation. He grinded down the Hindus, raised taxes, led to famines. People were forced to give up half their share of food, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe the slavery during that time, it was estimated about half the population of India were slaves at that time. So that goes to show you the extent of slavery. So that's it, pretty much in a nutshell, what I've done so far. Let me just quickly jump screen here.
I think the main thing what you did, you showed that the claim that the entire East, the entire Asian continent was conquered only by benign methods of lifting up the Qur'an was not exactly what you have been able to verify so far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just a falsehood to say that it's spread by missionary work or by the Sufis, quote unquote Sufis, which I'll get into that because most of them are actually missionaries and actually participated in the jihad, and I'll get into a bit later. This was the map.
Is this all in writing?
Sorry?
Is this all in writing, or? did you write about all this? Because I would love to keep it
Yeah,
centralized.
yeah. I can send you my presentation after I'm finished, if you like.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah.
You published it in the public sphere, right?
No, it's actually on my Google account. I use Google Slides.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I can just download it and send it to you if you like.
Okay.
Let me just. Here we go. Okay, yes, this is the map of the Khilji dynasty. This is where I left off. So you can see they, worked their way forward. They made it to Bengal here, got down to Gujarat as well, took Sindh, everything. So basically, Ghazni got in, and they were able to move further and further and further. So we went to the next dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty. This was founded by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq when he killed Khusro Khan, who was one of the generals of the previous dynasty. He was a general for Alauddin Khilji, if I remember correctly, in a coup, and he assumed power. And this is going to be, a recurring theme, coup d'état. So this dynasty reaches zenith between 1330 and 1335. So within a 5-year period, it's. But I will get into their policies and stuff like that because that's what's going to be more important than their actual territorial gain. It's marked by torture, brutality, rebellions, and this also what led to its downfall for this particular dynasty. So you can see as with the expansion comes, they'll be more brutal, they'll be more bloody, but at the end of the day, it's going to lead to disintegration. This will also be a recurring theme. And it was during this time that Tamerlane, or as he's called in India, Temur, he was able to sack Delhi in 1398, and I'll get into that as well, because that occurred during this time period. So the founder of this dynasty, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, he basically, rewarded those people that helped him come into power, and, took those people out that who were not supportive of him. So bloodshed again. This, inter-fighting, this inter-Muslim fighting is going to be a major theme, as I said before. He lowered the taxes on Muslims, conveniently. However, he raised taxes on Hindus, according to his court historian, Ziauddin Barni, and the rationale was so they might not be blinded by wealth or for to become, rebellious. Because there's always this, paranoia that the, Hindus are gonna, come back and, take revenge. So he's gonna grind them down. And so he sent his son to pillage Deogir, and basically it was the Hindu kingdoms of Arangal and Dilang, and he was unsuccessful in his first attempt. So you can see that expansion is going to be mainstream, jihad again. 4 months later, he sends reinforcements to his son because obviously they want to gain more territory, and he succeeded. And iconoclasm, the name Arangal was renamed Sultanpur. So you'll see this as well. Not only are mosques built on top of temples, but city names are changed to prove the superiority of Islam. So the wealth was plundered, state treasury, and slaves were sent all back to Delhi. And this is an interesting story, I thought, too, is that in Bengal, the Muslim aristocracy, so this is under Muslim rule, at this time, and they invite Ghiyasuddin to extend his empire, basically, to come in, take over, and knock out the governor there, who was Shamsuddin Firoz Shah, and this happened in 1325. So infighting again.
Sorry, who is doing what to whom here? Was this inside the Muslim empire?
Yes, this is inside, yes. This is in this inter-Muslim warfare, as I call it. Is that, Shamsuddin Firoz Shah was the governor, if I remember correctly, of Bengal at the time, and the aristocracy at the time was unhappy with him. So they said, Ghiyasuddin, since you're the emperor, come in and take this guy out because we're not happy with him.
So this is not only in Spain that this happened then.
Exactly, yeah. People don't know this. This is, not to give it away, but this is the bloodiest dynasty, royal dynasty, probably in history. According to Conrad Elst, who is a famous, historian, he says that this period is the most bloody period for any royal house ever. So, goes to Bengal, sacks the governor. I'm not sure if he was killed or not. I wasn't able to find that out. I'm assuming he was. I'm assuming for all intents and purposes because that seems to be a recurring theme. This is in 1325 AD, and so he places his son in charge of Delhi, while he and his favorite son Mahmud Khan attacked Lucknauti and became victorious. And it was during this time that his son hatched up a plot with a Sufi preacher named Nizamuddin Aulia, who's a famous Sufi who's respected in India for some reason, I'm not sure why, to kill his father inside of a wooden structure called Kushk, built without a foundation and designed to collapse so as to make it look like an accident. So the son is plotting not only against his father but also his own brother, so he can get the throne. And according to historians, which I backed this up with, Ibn Battuta, Al-Safadi, Sami, and Vincent Smith, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and his favorite son were killed in this collapse. And Ulu Khan ascends the throne and takes the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, once again, blood doesn't matter here. It's not about, blood being thicker than water. There's no such thing as loyalty. It's all about the throne. And so Muhammad bin Tughlaq, nobody else is in the way, and his campaigns and his territorial expansion is going to be short and brief. He attacks and plunders multiple spots, Mala, Gujarat, Dilang, Gambila, etc., etc. Each raid and attack have brought new wealth and ransom payments from captured people. Because once again, you can, it's in the Quran, I believe, it's in chapter 9 somewhere, where you can exchange prisoners or kill them outright. I forget the verse of that. If somebody knows, they can enlighten me on that. But I'm pretty sure it's in chapter 9. And unlike the Khiljis, he would actually annex unstable kingdoms. And this will actually be a bad thing. Because you can't really, you can take over the territory, but if the kingdom and if the people are, unstable, it's not going to be a good thing. And so he actually shifts the capital in 1327 from Delhi to Daulatabad, which is in present-day Maharashtra. This is in central India, and it was actually a strategic move. So he could take over the actual Deccan region, which is in southern India. So he wants to expand, but in order to do so, he's like, I have to move the capital. So this is a strategic move, so he could continue the jihad in India. And during this time that the Vijayanagara Empire comes out of nowhere and liberates southern India from the Delhi Sultanate. So you can see that this is the beginning of the end, if you will, for the Sultanate. It's going to be in retreat. 1334, there's a rebellion in Malbar, and while on his way to suppress the rebellion, there was an outbreak of bubonic plague, and he was taken ill. So he's trying to salvage his kingdom because it's falling apart, but he gets ill, and so he retreats back to the capital of Daulatabad, and as a result he lost Malbar and also Swara Samudra, and this was followed by a revolt in Bengal. So you can see that he's losing his grip, he's losing his power, and he's pretty much powerless at this point. So he says, I'm going to shift the capital back to Delhi in 1335. And in 1326, a brave Hindu by the name of Kapaya Nayak, he defeats his army and reconquers Warangal. And in 1338, his own nephew revolted, whom he attacked, captured, and had his skin peeled off while he was still alive. So he hasn't lost his brutal edge, to say the least, but he's losing his empire. So he's getting desperate.
Wow.
And
TJ, was there any significance to Delhi?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the site of everything. The Red Fort is built there. For those that don't know, there's a famous fort. This was built during the Mughal times. But yes, Delhi is the site of numerous massacres, numerous executions. The throne was there for so long, and it becomes a central point. Indeed, it does shift as it did with this, with this man. But that was more of a strategic move. But Delhi is going to be the main area where the seat of power is going to be throughout Muslim rule, pretty much.
But there's nothing spiritual. There's nothing a shrine or something that would draw the people to the city.
No, actually, I told you before about the Qutb Minar and how it was built from destroyed Hindu and Jain temples, right? So yeah. So Muslims go there and see, look, we used to run this place. It's a thing of pride for them, and it's a source of humiliation for us. So you can see the difference of opinion, if you will. Delhi is going to be important, yeah, but it's not for the reasons that we people, Indians, Hindus, or whatever you want to call us, feel. So for them, it's more about conquering. It's about signs of conquest. And for us, Delhi is more associated with strife and struggle and death. really. Any other questions? Can I continue?
Not from me, just for you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yes, Image, go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just, isn't Red Fort in Spain? Is it just a...
What is in Spain?
the Red Fort, he said, I think.
TJ, is the Red Fort, is that... He muted you. Earthen, stop muting people.
I'm not sure if there's one in Spain. I'm guessing that it could be. I don't really know. The only Red Fort that I know of is the one in Delhi, but that might be the case. I'm not sure. Let me go back. Actually, sorry. So yeah, he has his nephew killed. He peels his skin off while he's still alive. His empire continued to collapse, and he's taken ill at Sindh on March 20th. And died on March 20th, 1351. His empire shrunk to central India only. So you can see the Hindus are getting ground, and this is, the state in which the empire is left, and this is how he dies. His policies, nothing really new. He raised taxes so much to where Hindus refused to pay them at all. He increased the land tax, if you recall, the Kharaj, Kharaj, which is found in Sharia. Actually, it's a land tax on non-Muslims, and he increased those in India's fertile lands between the Ganges and the Yamuna rivers by 10-fold in some districts and 20-fold in others, depending on how fertile those lands were. And along with these taxes, the Dhimmis were required to pay crop taxes by giving half or more of their harvested crop, just like Lauddin Khilji did in the previous dynasty. These policies led entire Hindu villages of farmers to quit farming altogether and escape into the jungles. So you see a mass exodus. And many Hindus resorted to robbery as a result of these policies. No surprise there, I guess, when you drive people to so much desperation, they're willing to do anything. And also as a result of this, famines occurred. So you can imagine thousands, if not millions of people dying of starvation. And his response is this. He says, with extreme bitterness, he expands arrests, increases tortures and mass killings. So he doesn't feel one ounce of sympathy or remorse. His thing is just punish them. And according to his court historian Ziauddin Barni, in his contemporary account, he says Tughlaq was killing as if he was quote unquote cutting down weeds. So that's how much killing was going on during this time period. And historical documents also show that he was severe with not only non-Muslims, but also he executed Shias and Sufis. As you can see, these people are considered as heretics according to mainstream Sunnis. And that will also be a recurring theme. And he also noted that not a day or week passed by without spilling of much Muslim blood. So not only are the Hindus and the non-Muslims, but also the Shias and Sufis also being persecuted and killed during this man's reign. So his cousin, Muhammad bin Tughlaq's cousin, takes over after he dies. His name is Firoz Shah. He was sent to the throne at the age of 45 and inherits a broken kingdom. Like I said before, all that was left was central India at the time of his cousin's death. So he tried to wage a war against Bengal to get Bengal back for 11 months in 1359, but it didn't fall. And he was weak militarily, mainly because of his inept leadership. So this guy is not much of a leader. His death in 1388 was followed by civil wars and anarchy. So you can see that the dominoes are starting to fall down. And this paved the way for Tamerlane. So Tamerlane is going to come in here and take advantage of the situation. And I'll get into Tamerlane in just one second. Just briefly on Firoz Shah. He wrote in his memoir that he banned torture such as amputations, tearing out of eyes, sawing people alive, crushing people's bones, pouring molten lead into throats, and driving nails into the hands and the feet, etc., etc. So you think that, hey, maybe this guy was pretty cool, but actually he also notes that he did not tolerate open proselytizing of Shias, nor did he tolerate Hindus to rebuild their temples after his armies had destroyed them. He also executed many Shias and Hindus, so he may have gotten rid of some of the execution methods, if you will, but nonetheless, this guy was not a good, a good guy to Hindus. And according to his court historians, Shams Shiraj Afif, Feroz Shah was quoted to have burned Hindus alive for secretly following their religion and refusing to, to convert to Islam. So even his own court historian can testify to some of his atrocities. Raises taxes and jizya, common theme again, while also levying jizya on Hindu Brahmins. And this is interesting, quite an interest of note, because who had been historically exempt from paying. Because they would actually, like I said before, when Ben Qasim came, they would actually tax the pilgrims coming to certain temples because they saw that they can make business out of it. But now we see that Feroz Shah is actually going to tax the Brahmins now. So everybody's being taxed from top to bottom. It doesn't matter which caste you are, or which class you belong to, or whatever, rich, poor, whatever, high caste, low caste. Everybody's getting taxed now, thanks to Feroz Shah. And he also has expanded the number of slaves, in his service, and also the service of his nobles. And he also destroyed temples, the most famous of which was the Jagannath Temple. This was in December of 1360. And from his own words, and this is the first time that Sultan is actually going to mention the taking of jizya. He says, and I quote, "I encourage my infidel subjects to embrace the religion of the Prophet, and I proclaim that everyone who repeated the creed and became a Muslim should be exempt from the jizya, or the poll tax. Information of this came to the ears of the people at large, and a great number of Hindus presented themselves and were submitted to the honor of Islam."
TJ, if I may, is there any significance with this title, Shah, that sometimes it's the beginning, then in the middle, at the end?
No, I don't think so, really. Shah, well, from what I understand, the meaning is it just refers to royalty, really. So, they used to call the emperors actually Hensha, which meaning emperor. But Shah is like the root of that word, obviously. So it's just really for title purposes. They had names before they took these names. They had actual real names. Just that I use their actual names when they, actually ascend the throne. So
okay,
yeah,
so
these
it's like
are
the pharaoh,
titles.
but you could just place it anywhere you want.
Exactly. You can put it anywhere where
Because you can't say Elizabeth Queen. It doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, but Shah just means royalty. It's just a title, really, but it really means nobility. It refers to a title of nobility. And the destruction of this temple, Jagannath, as I said before, occurred in December 1360, and they were on their way to the city of Puri, where he demolished this temple and desecrated the images. And from his own memoirs, he says that after its destruction, he ordered the nose of the image of Jagannath to be perforated and disgraced by casting down on the ground. They dug out their idols, which were worshipped by the polytheists in the kingdom of Jajnagar, and overthrew them as they did the image of Jagannath for being laid in front of the mosques. Once again, so they could be trampled upon, basically, by the people, so that the body and the sides of the images might be trampled at the time of the ascent and descent, entrance and exit, by the shoes and the feet of the Muslims. So iconoclasm again, and humiliation, once again, religious persecution, really. And nothing new here, really. I mean, after every victory, after every campaign, and obviously which they won, just you get more loot and more slaves. And these sultans in this particular dynasty actually patronized the slave market called the al-Nakas, the trade of both foreign and domestic slaves. So not only are they locals, but people coming from all over the place. So not just India. It's greatly flourished under the Tughlaq dynasty. And Ibn Battuta, as I said before, who was a historian at that time, records that he fathered a child with each of his two slave girls, one from Greece and one from India. So this is not just a domestic slave market, this is an international one. And Ibn Battuta also records that Muhammad Tughlaq sent along with his emissaries both slave boys and slave girls as gifts to other countries like China. So, and a contemporary source says that the Sultan never ceases to show the great zeal in making war upon the infidels. Every day, thousands of slaves are sold at a very low price. So great is the number of prisoners from attacks on neighboring kingdoms. So, gives you an idea of slavery, not just taxes and all that stuff, but also slavery. Nothing really new here. Just some contemporary references to it. Ibn Battuta again, talking about slavery and stuff like that. I think I can skip that. I think I've pretty much made my point when it comes to slavery. And this guy again, just his this historian, he goes into detail. And as I said before, when he was not just killing Hindus, he was killing Muslims or heretic Muslims. Then not a week passed by without the spilling of much Muslim blood and the running of streams of gore before the entrance of his palace. This included cutting people in half, skinning them alive, chopping off heads, and displaying them on poles as a warning to others. From the Qur'an again, striking terror into the hearts of disbelievers. Or having prisoners tossed about by elephants with swords attached to their tusks. Another quote: the Sultan was far too ready to shed blood. He punished small faults and great, without respect of persons, whether men of learning, piety, or high station. Every day hundreds of people chained, pinioned, and fettered are brought to this hall, and those who are for execution are executed, for torture tortured, those for beating, beaten. And this quote is from same man, and this is regard to a sheikh. He said who was imprisoned. He said on the 14th day the Sultan sent him food, but the Sheikh Shinab al-Din refused to eat. When the Sultan heard this, he ordered that the Sheikh be fed human excrement dissolved in water. His officials spread out the Sheikh on his back and opened his mouth and made him drink it. On the following day he was beheaded. And Ibn Battuta also records that he demanded bribes from his officials while he was in Delhi, and also deducted 10% of any sums that the Sultan gave them. And towards the end of his stay in the Tughlaq dynasty, Ibn Battuta came under suspicion for his friendship with a Sufi. Both Ibn Battuta and the Sufi were arrested. While Ibn Battuta was allowed to leave India, he recorded the fate of the Sufi, and I quote: the Sultan had the holy man's beard plucked out hair by hair, then banished him from Delhi. Later, the Sultan ordered him to return to court, which the holy man refused to do. The man was arrested, tortured in the most horrible way, and beheaded.
Wow, charming. Where are the people who said everything is better in the past?
All I hear is chirping in the background, man. Crickets chirping. And this is the Tughlaq dynasty at its peak. You can see it makes its way. So it was able to somehow make up for what was in the beginning, what was reduced to central India. And there you see Dawlatabad here, where the capital was shipped before. You can see, because they wanted to make their way down south, but eventually they moved it back to Delhi, and it will remain in Delhi, I think, from now on, if I'm correctly, except for one period. But for the most part, Delhi is going to be the main seat now. And once again, I told you about Tamerlane. It was during Firoz Shah's time, and this was in complete civil war and anarchy. Like I said, everything had broken down. So they gained so much territory in like the Tughlaq dynasty to start with, and they just lost it. And Tamerlane is the founder of the Timurid Empire of Persia and Central Asia. So he comes all the way from Central Asia just to get an opportunity to sack Delhi. So he crosses the Indus River in September 30th of 1398, advances toward Multan, captures it by October. And the capture of Delhi took place in a battle with Sultan Nasiruddin Mahmud Shah Tughlaq, one of the last rulers of the Tughlaq dynasty, which I didn't even mention because he's really inconsequential. You'll see why. And he joins forces with Madhu Iqbal. I believe it was another nobleman or general. So it's basically 2-on-1 here. So you think that they would have the upper hand. And Madhu Iqbal had war elephants in chains with poisons on their tusks, which frightened Tamerlane's men. So Tamerlane orders men to dig a trench in front of their positions. He then loaded his camels with as much wood and hay as they could carry. So when the war elephants charged, Tamerlane set the hay on fire and prodded the camels with iron sticks, causing them to charge the elephants as they would hollow in pain. So Tamerlane understood that elephants panicked easily, and as a result, the elephants turned around and stampeded back toward their own lines, so killing their own men. So this Tamerlane is not when it comes to the battlefield, he knows what he's doing. So after he realizes that their own elephants are trampling them, he capitalizes and secures an easy victory over them, and the Sultan retreats with his remaining forces, and this is where it's going to get bad. So Delhi is sacked for 8 days. So after Delhi falls and all this plundering is going on, you see the Hindus, mainly Hindus, are uprising now because they think that, basically, from what I understand, that they want to get their city back, basically. And this resulted in a bloody massacre. And from contemporary sources, it's said that the city reeked of decomposing bodies of its citizens, with their heads being erected like structures and the bodies left as food for the birds. I spoke to my grandfather. He told me that when they were in school, they learned that, during Tamerlane's sack and afterwards, that the story goes that not a single bird in Delhi uttered a sound. So that gives you an idea of the devastation that was caused by this man. And Delhi will not recover from Tamerlane's devastation until a century later. This is in his own words from his memoirs. He said that we had taken more than 100,000 infidels and Hindu prisoners, and that they were all in my camp. I directly gave my command that every man who had infidel prisoners was to put them to death. When the order became known to the Ghazis of Islam, they drew their swords and put their prisoners to death. 100,000 infidels, impious idolaters on that day were slain. And you can see from his own memoirs as well, he said that my object in the invasion of Hindustan is to lead an expedition against the infidels, that according to the law of Muhammad, upon whom and his family be the blessings and peace of God, we may convert them to the true faith, the people of that country, and purify the land itself from the filth of infidelity and polytheism, and that we may overthrow their temples and idols and become Ghazis and Mujahids before God. So you're talking at least 100,000 people slaughtered at one time, and not to mention all the destruction and devastation. So we're talking over 100,000 people killed in pretty much a day. And then you have more being...
Can you just explain the numbers? Because the format is in hundreds, I think, isn't it?
Well, you're talking about the final body count?
No, because it says there massacre of Hindus 1,00,000.
Yeah, that's supposed to be 100,000. In Indian numerals, it's called 1 lakh, and they write it differently, but that's supposed to be 100,000. And
what is 1 lakh?
I believe that's 100,000. That's the there's an actual number for that. There's a term for that. It's called lakh, L-A-K-H, and that comma should not be there. So. Ignore that first comma. It should be 100,000 Hindus.
I've seen that a number of times, and I don't
know why Indians do that. I have no idea, because I know it's common in India, and I don't know why they put that comma there. I really don't know, because it makes no sense. But easily, 100,000 people one day, and not to mention the 8 days of plundering, like I talked about before. So you can imagine that massacre being well above that number. And this is just one guy during one raid. So. You can imagine the devastation. And this man is hailed as a hero in Central Asia for some reason. So, on the ashes of this, basically Tamerlane appoints a new dynasty. It's still part of the Delhi Sultanate, and we're still in the Delhi Sultanate. Now, Tamerlane succeeds because nobody else is going to claim the throne, obviously, since he sacked Delhi, and he installs his own dynasty, actually. And this is known as the Sayyid dynasty. If I remember correctly, if I can go back, Tamerlane was Shia, if I remember correctly. As you can see, it says, he says, upon whom and his family be the blessings of peace of God. So I believe Tamerlane was Shia. So I think that the Sayyids are a Shia dynasty. So not too much is known about this dynasty. I'm not going to really get into it. I just know that these rulers ascended the throne at these certain times. And the only thing worthy of note for this dynasty really is that the last ruler, Alauddin Shah, he abdicated the throne. And this set up a new dynasty called the Lodi dynasty. And Alauddin Shah abdicated to Bahlul Khan Lodi on April 19, 1451. And the Lodi dynasty will be the last dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate, and it will be short-lived. So, like I said, Bahlul Khan Lodi ascends the throne. This was on April 19th of 1451. And he's going to be the first Afghan Pashtun, or as we say, Pathan, ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. And the most important event of his reign was the conquest of Jaunpur. I really couldn't find much about him. That's his only noteworthy achievement. In this dynasty, there's only going to be 3 rulers, so it's going to be pretty quick. And this will give way to the Mughal Empire, just as a side note. And then His son Sikandar Shah takes over on July 15th, 1489, and he discriminated against Hindu subjects. No surprise here. And one story of his religious tolerance, it goes as follows. A Hindu saint, a sadhu, as it's called, Bodhan, stated that Islam and Hinduism were equally acceptable to God, and as a result, he was burned alive. So trying to find common ground, and that's not going to happen because Islam has to dominate, and there's a prime example. According to M.M. Sayyid, his book, The History of the Delhi Sultanate, he states that Sikandar Lodi frequently demolished temples and raised mosques in places like Mandrel, Udgir, and Narvar. And in Mathura, he prevented Hindus from bathing in their sacred guts for purpose of, ablution and from shaving their heads, specifically. So you can see the Hindus are being, grinded down again. And here we go. We move the capital from Delhi to Agra, which is an ancient Hindu city which had been destroyed due to plunder and attacks early during the Delhi Sultanate. So they're trying to. I'm not sure why this shift happened. I was not able to find that out, but this was one of his noteworthy events, was changing the capital. My guess would be to expand territory, but I can't confirm that. Sikandar Shah Lodi dies on November 21st, 1517. And he was the most successful ruler of the Lodi dynasty, and he was succeeded by his second son, Ibrahim Lodi, who was the last and final ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. And Ibrahim Lodi, unlike his father, didn't enjoy the support of the chiefs of his kingdom, and that's going to come into play. You'll see why. So he attacks and kills his elder brother, Jalal Khan, who had supported the emirs and chiefs. So he makes a mistake here because he's going against the aristocracy because they wanted Jalal Khan to ascend the throne and not Ibrahim. So this led to the Afghan nobility to reach out to Babur, who's in Central Asia. Babur is going to be the founder of the Mughal Empire, and he is descended both from Genghis Khan and Tamerlane, and that's going to come into effect, and I'll show you why. So the Afghan nobility gets fed up with Ibrahim Lodi. They reach out to Babur, and he defeats him at the First Battle of Panipat in 1526, and let the Mughal Empire begin. I'm only going to mention a few of these kings. Mughal Empire is just so vast, and after this man dies, Aurangzeb, who will the most infamous of rulers, the kingdom just goes into slow decline, really. So I'm going to cover these guys mainly. Like I said before, Babur meets Ibrahim Lodi's forces at the First Battle of Panipat on April 21st, 1526. And this is one of the first battles, actually, in Indian military history. If I don't recall, it is the first to involve gunpowder, firearms, and field military. And this is going to work to Babur's advantage, even though he's outnumbered, numbers-wise. So hearing the size of Lodi's army, Babur secured his right flank against the city of Panipat while digging a trench, just like his ancestor Tamerlane, covered with tree branches to secure his left flank. In the center, he placed 700 carts tied together with ropes, and between every two carts, there was temporary fortification for his men. So his men could basically go out, fire a few rounds, and come back in and take refuge. Go back, fire, come back, go back, fire. So this man is on the battlefield, he knows what he's doing. So Ibrahim Lodi arrives, and he finds that the approach is too narrow. Babur takes advantage. He says, charge, and they flank Lodi's army, and his troops were unable to get into action, and as the tide turned, many of them fled. So Ibrahim Lodi's forces, a lot of them left. They just gave up and, ran for it. And the sound of cannons, obviously, like I said before, he has, artillery, and Lodi's elephants trampled his own men, much like during Tamerlane, what he did. So faced with musket fire, cannon fire, and cavalry attacks from all sides, Ibrahim Lodi fights to the death, and he dies with 6,000 of his remaining troops, and 15,000 apparently died total. So Babur ascends to Delhi. He occupies actually both Delhi and Agra, so he takes over everything, took the throne, and established Mughal dynasty. But he has one more challenger to overcome to be truly in charge of India.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I have a question. How is it told about the Turks and the Ottoman Empire? Did they fight each other, or is there any way of history between them?
You're talking about the Ottoman Empire versus the Mughal Empire?
Yeah, somehow, because I don't see much in history about these two larger empires.
No, I don't think they actually fought with each other. I think they recognized each other. I know that they had communications with each other. In terms of fighting each
Because
other or being at war with each other, no, I don't think so.
because at the same time you're talk right now, it is Ottoman Empire was mainly on the Balkan active
Yeah,
and
they
also in the Near East, but I can't find any real substance on even contacts with the Mughal empires.
The only
So I
contact I,
find it.
the only contact I know of was with during the reign of Akbar, who was the third emperor of the Mughal Empire. They had written contact, I believe. Um, that's the only time that I could find actually that they were in contact with each other, and that was just through correspondence. Um, I'm not sure if they engaged in any sort of slave trade with each other, or I'm assuming that they did. I don't know, but there was a minor correspondence I know between Akbar, the third emperor, and with the Ottoman Empire. But that's the only time period which I know of. I'm assuming that they knew about each other, that they knew each other, had empires and territory and stuff like that. But I don't think they ever really collaborated or had like really deep relations.
Okay.
This is two pictures of the Battle of Panipat. On the left, you can see here the soldiers, the elephants trampling their own soldiers because of the gunfire that's coming in from Babur's side. So you can see them being trampled right here. And this is the general massacre that took place after Lodi's forces had pretty much abandoned him, and Lodi decided to charge against Babur's forces. And you can see the heads here just chopped off one by one. And the second challenger is Rana Sanga, who was a Hindu king. And this is what Babur needs to do, is defeat him to gain control of everything and to be unimposed. So Rana Sanga forms an alliance with other Rajputs, and as well as Afghans loyal to the former Lodi dynasty. So you see everybody coming together against Babur. Babur's outnumbered again. And Babur denounces those Afghans who joined Rana Sanga as murtads and kafirs. No surprise there. Babur also declared that the battle against Sanga to be a jihad. He also made his nobles and soldiers to take an oath on the Qur'an that they would fight to the death. And Babur later wrote that it was a really good plan and it had a favorable propagandist effect on friend and foe. So to say that this has nothing to do with religion, people need to get a reality check. So they meet at the Battle of Kanba. This takes place on March 16, 1527. And like Panipat, he strengthened his front by using carts, and the gaps in between were used for horsemen to charge. And
The fountain.
sorry, sorry, did somebody say something?
I heard Fulton or Falcon or something.
Okay. I guess I'll continue. And despite putting up a valiant effort, Rana Sanga and his allies, they suffered a disastrous defeat. And following the victory, Babur ordered a tower of enemy skulls to be erected. The practice was started with Tamerlane, and the objective of the tower skulls was to terrorize opponents. Once again, the Quran says that will cast terror into the hearts of disbelievers. So
They had the cutest ideas.
yeah, just it's people don't know this stuff. And then Babur commented thus, and I quote, "Swordsmen, though some Hindustanis may be, most of them are ignorant and unskilled in military movement stand, in soldiery, counsel, and procedure." So he always had the upper hand when it came to the methods of warfare, if you will. We're always going to wonder what if Babur didn't have those cannons and those artillery and stuff like that. But
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if there's any coincidence or if there's any connection, and this is now what is going to play right into Ike's answer. Is there, with the Turkish cannon, is that something that they got from the Indians?
I don't think so, no, because I think Babur came from Central Asia, so I'm assuming he got it. That it was developed there or something. But it might have been because the Ottomans, they were set up at that time too. So it might have made its way over. I don't know that actually. I don't know that. But Babur's the first one to bring those to an Indian battlefield. So he must have got them from somewhere, and I don't think it was from India. I think it was definitely either from Central Asia or maybe even from the Ottoman Empire. Maybe, who knows? That's a good question. Actually, I should probably look that up afterwards. I don't know where he got them from or how he got them actually. So I would definitely look that up. But that's what leads to his victory. That's what's going to consolidate his empire. So technology. And Babur from his own, from his own memoirs. He said, for Islam's sake, I wandered in the wilds, prepared for war with pagans and Hindus, resolved myself to meet the march death. Thanks be to God, a Ghazi I became. And Babur's most notorious iconoclasm was the building of the Babri Mosque. At this shrine before was a Hindu temple dedicated to the god Rama, and it was leveled by him, and a mosque was built in its place. Ironically, the mosque, was destroyed in 1992 by a Hindu mob because they wanted to rebuild that temple again. And the case is actually still going in court. So we'll see if that temple gets built, but this mosque no longer exists. It's been destroyed. It was, I'm not sure if it was bulldozed or was it bombed. I forget the story, but it was in 92. So this mosque no longer exists. And there's a court case going on right now to get the temple rebuilt that was originally there. Not sure why it has to go to court cases because it's in the historical record, so I don't see the problem. But once again, political correctness. Some people say that this event didn't even happen. Leftists and Marxist historians in India play this down, saying that it never happened, but it clearly did. And this source right here was from Annette Beveridge, and it's a translation of the actual, Baburnama, the actual memoirs of Babur, where he built this place on top of a destroyed temple. So there's really no controversy here. So the temple should be rebuilt, but unfortunately it has to go through the legal system before it can obtain approval. So the next king we get to is Akbar. He's probably going to be the most famous, I would say, if not the second famous, most famous emperor. I'm going to break his reign down into two phases, so I'll start with the former phase. So he greatly expanded the empire, and he goes into places like Kashmir, Rajputana, Balochistan, Gujarat, and Malwa. Two of his most famous early campaigns were the siege of Chittorgarh and the siege of Ranthambore. And at the siege of Chittorgarh, which took place in October of 1567, he besieged the fort for 4 months, and the Mughal forces stormed the fort, and 30,000 people were slaughtered. In addition, 8,000 Rajput women immolated themselves. Once again, that term is called Johar. Akbar then ordered the heads of his enemies to be displayed upon towers erected throughout the region in order to demonstrate his authority and his victory over Chittorgarh. So, off to a great start. On the left, you can see the women setting themselves on fire. And then here you see Akbar, right here, giving the general order for the destruction of the fort and of the inhabitants. You can see women being killed here, see them taking their livestock, taking women as slaves, you can see right here, and just general destruction. So,
did you explain that last time with fire?
Yes,
purification, and so that there's something special and specific about the fire.
Yeah, basically it differs from sati. Sati is when basically your husband dies and you set yourself on fire. Johar is different. It was done by mainly the noble women, and basically when they figured out that they would lose a war, lose a battle, to protect their honor, they would dress up in their best clothes, as you can see here, dressed up very, very nicely, and they would light themselves on fire with cotton oil. I believe it was cotton oil. And they would light themselves on. So instead of being taken as concubines, sex slaves, etc., to protect their honor, they would set themselves on fire. And this was mainly, I wouldn't say all of it happened, but mainly amongst the Rajput women of the Rajput kingdoms. But also other women did it, but for the most part, it was from women from that kingdom that did it. On the left, you see that again. On the right, like I said before, you can see Akbar ordering the general destruction of Chittorgarh. And I don't have to go into detail about these images. You guys can form a picture for yourselves. So Akbar's not off to a real great start. It does change, however, in his later period. I would say the later period would be starting from the early 1570s until his death in 1605. So Akbar was the first emperor to abolish jizya. So this is a monumental thing, absolutely unheard of. So he abolishes it. He also decreed that Hindus who had been forced to Islam could convert back to Hinduism without penalty. So they could openly commit apostasy without any penalty. He also practiced several Hindu customs like celebrating Diwali, renouncing beef, and banning cow slaughter. He also created his own religion. People don't know this. It's called the Deen-e-Ilahi, which means religion of God. He basically takes things from Islam, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Jainism, and Christianity and mixes them all together. So he's basically the prophet, if you will, or the founder of this religion. And it's a syncretic religion. So there's no sacred scripture in this religion, and everybody's equal. There's no sort of hierarchy. So everybody has their relationship with God. As you can obviously from hearing that, you would think that obviously this act was declared as blasphemy by the Orthodoxy, and by 1580, rebellion had broke out, and there were actual fatwas from religious clerics saying that he was a kafir, and he suppresses this rebellion, and he had a declaration signed by all the major ulemas that he was the Khalifa of the age. So I'm not sure if those scholars were forced to do so. I'm assuming they were, because there's no way that he can be considered as an Orthodox Muslim, obviously, if you find your own religion. So Akbar's later period is more tolerant, definitely. Getting rid of jizya is a major step and doing all these things. I would think that the major reason, from what I understand, it wasn't Akbar himself, but he was under the influence of his court. Specifically, there were two people in his court by the names of Faz and Fazi, and they were brothers, and they apparently had a very liberal outlook, and they were very inclusive. So they were, I guess, able to make Akbar become more laxed, I guess you could say, in his Islamic zeal. So you see so there's really two Akbars, really. There's the early period and there's the later period. So mixed legacy for him. Most Muslims I talk to actually consider him as a heretic. So I've met very few Muslims who actually praise him. So goes to show you. Akbar's son takes over. Jahangir is his name, and Jahangir sets the precedent, at least in the Mughal dynasty, for sons rebelling against their fathers. So everything up to this point was relatively smooth, transitioning. But once again, it's all about the throne. And Akbar's will was for his grandson Khusro Mirza to become the next emperor, but he was defeated by his father. So Khusro Mirza was Akbar's grandson and Jahangir's son. So Jahangir went to battle with his own son for the throne in 1606, and he lost, and he was blinded as punishment by his father. Jahangir, nothing really special here. His rule was really, I don't want to say uneventful, but he was an alcoholic, basically, and it was his wife, the Empress Nur Jahan, who became the real power, really behind the throne. The early period, you could say that, he was in charge, but slowly but surely, under the influence of alcohol and also, from what I read, opium, he just, his wife pretty much starts, becoming the power. Just one example of his cruelty was the execution of Guru Arjan, who was the fifth guru of Sikhism. And this is going to be a turning point in Sikh history. And this execution, from Jahangir's own words, is that there was a Hindu named Arjan in Gondwal, which is a town in Punjab, on the banks of the Bias River, and pretending to be a spiritual guide. He had won over as devotees many simple-minded Hindus and even some ignorant, stupid Muslims by broadcasting his claims to be a saint. They called him Guru. Many fools from all around had recourse to him and believed in him implicitly. For 3 or 4 generations, they had been peddling this same stuff. For a long time, I had been thinking that either this false trade should be eliminated or that he should be brought into the embrace of Islam. At length, when Khusro passed by here, his son again, this inconsequential little fellow wished to pay homage to Khusro. When Khusro stopped his residence, Arjan came out and had an interview with Khusro, giving him some elementary spiritual precepts picked up here and there. He made a mark with saffron on his forehead, which is called Kashka in the idiom of the Hindus, and which they consider lucky. When this was reported to me, I realized how perfectly false he was, and ordered him brought to me. I awarded his houses and dwellings and those of his children to Murtaza Khan, who was a governor at the time, if I recall correctly, and I ordered his possessions and goods confiscated and him executed. And this is a picture of his actual execution. Here is Guru Arjan right here, obviously. He was made to sit, according to Sikh tradition, on a hot plate with burning fire underneath, while burning hot sand was poured all over his body. And this execution, I think, lasted for, I think it was 7 or 8 days. I don't recall, but he eventually, succumbed to it, obviously, and he passed away. But he was tortured to death, basically, all because he had placed a saffron mark on his son's forehead, basically.
Yeah, hot guy.
Yeah, and this is the turning point
But it's amazing what they dream up. I mean, it's amazing how many different ways these people tortured somebody to death.
Wait! This is the tip of the iceberg for this, for this empire. So just keep your seatbelt straps. Stop. And just another quick anecdote from his I believe this is from his memoirs. He says that from Jahangir, he says that it was reported to me that many of the infidels and superstitious sects of the Jains of Gujarat had made several very great and splendid temples. Emperor Jahangir ordered them to be banished from the country, and their temples to be demolished. Their idol was thrown down the uppermost step of the mosque, that it might be trodden down by those who came to say their daily prayers there. So iconoclasm again. Continuing thing, just the hatred of idolatry, the hatred of polytheism, which is embedded. And Shah Jahan takes over. He's Jahangir's son. And he sets the precedent for killing relatives in the Mughal Empire. Khusro Mirza, which was his brother, who was already blinded for rebelling against their father, he was put to death, along with his other brother, Shahryar, and the sons of his uncle, Prince Danial. So when he ascends the throne, he makes sure that everybody's gone, that nobody can challenge him. So we're off to a great killing spree right here. And he's mainly known for his architectural and artistic patronage, really. He's the one that constructed the famous Taj Mahal, which was basically for his favorite, Mumtaz Mahal, who died, and is basically her tomb, basically. And he is buried there as well, next to her grave. That won't be till later, though. He's also famous for the Jama Masjid in Delhi, which is probably the biggest mosque, I think, in India. The Red Fort in Delhi, as I talked about before, the Red Fort. He's the one that actually constructed it. Jahangir's mausoleum, so for his father, which is in current-day Lahore in Pakistan, and the Shalimar Gardens, which is also, in Lahore. So he's just really, just going to be there for architectural and for patronage and stuff like that. However, in 1633, he reimposes Sharia positions against construction or repair of churches and temples, and subsequently orders the demolitions of new temples. He becomes ill in 1658 and was deposed by his son, Aurangzeb. So what goes around comes around, And he puts him under house arrest in the Agra fort, where he eventually dies in 1666. And his son, Aurangzeb, in my view, is going to be the worst of the worst. Another brief anecdote about this man. He said that it has been brought to the notice of His Majesty that during the late reign of many idol temples had been begun, but remained unfinished at Benares, which is a city in central India, the great stronghold of infidelity. The infidels were now desirous of completing them. His Majesty, the defender of the faith, gave orders that at Benares and throughout all his dominions, in every place, all temples that have been begun should be cast down. It was now reported from the province of Allahabad that 76 temples had been destroyed in the district of Benares. So this is the dude that Aurangzeb. This is the man who's probably the most infamous emperor probably in Indian history, in my view, and you'll see why. So before he can actually ascend the throne, there's a war of succession, and he executes both of his brothers. So just like his father and Shah Jahan had executed all his family members, Aurangzeb follows in his footsteps. He executes his brothers Darashikoh, who I will come to a bit later. On a side note, he was a very enlightened, Muslim. He was influenced by Hindu thought. He thought that he translated the Upanishads into Persian, actually, and he believed that the Upanishads and the Vedas were the first books of monotheism that were revealed by God, actually. So he's a very liberal person. I'll get into him a little more. And Murad Baksh as well, his older brother. And he's basically, he slaughtered so many people. Other famous executions include Guru Tegh Bahadur, who's the ninth Guru of the Sikhs, and Sarmat, who's a Sufi mystic. originally from present-day Azerbaijan. He was born Jewish, converted to Islam, apparently became an atheist towards the end of his life, actually, on a side note. Aurangzeb, so he reimposes jizya. So Akbar stops it, or Aurangzeb says, well, let's bring it back and let's start destroying temples too. And the Mughal Empire territorially reaches its zenith under his rule, because he's going to launch many campaigns. And he actually issues his own fatwa, the Fatwa-e-Alamgiri, which was an edict of Hanafi Sunni Islamic law. And keep that in mind, Hanafi school in mind for later on, which spanned 30 volumes. So this is a 30-volume fatwa of Islamic law that's going to be the law of the land during this man's reign. So keep that in mind, 30 volumes. This is pretty in-depth, detailed. And he hired 500 experts in fiqh, 300 from South Asia, 100 from Iraq, and 100 from Hijaz to compile this fatwa. So this guy's no joke. He takes his religion very, very seriously. And this will form the basis of law based on social class, economic status, and religion. So this is going to cover all spheres of life.
Yeah, but this is not religion. By Mr. Hanafi.
Yes, I guess you could say, but at the end of the day, he's going to implement it. He's going to implement it fully in pretty much every sphere of life. And, like I said, he's very monstrous. His name just brings up vitriol in India. Just ask any, ask any Hindu about the name, Aurangzeb, and they'll tell you what they think about him. He's going to destroy Solman Temple. That temple should ring a bell from last week. That was first destroyed by Mahmud Ghaznavi. This temple was destroyed multiple times. And it wasn't rebuilt until after the partition of India in 1948, if I remember correctly. So, a trampling of Hindus protesting jizya, taxed by his elephants. So he actually trampled Hindus who refused to pay jizya under the feet of elephants. He also, in this royal order, he also prohibited Hindus to ride horses and palanquins. So basically, they can't be equal to like the Muslims. And the beheading of Guru Tegh Bahadur, I'll get into that, and his own brother Dara Shikoh, as I said before, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'll actually get into his total body count later on. The numbers are staggering. And this is a picture of Aurangzeb right here, receiving the head of his brother Dara Shikoh, as I said before, his brother, who was the translator of the Upanishads, as I said before, and who believed that the Hindu texts were the first books of monotheism that were revealed by God. He was executed under the pretense that he was an apostate. So, obviously, if you make statements like that, you're going to be branded as a kafir. And these are two pictures. He actually sent Dara Shikoh, his brother's head, to his father right here, Shah Jahan, in a case, just to make him suffer. And at this time, Shah Jahan, like I said before, is in the Agra fort, dying, because he's ill. And this next to him is his daughter, who supported Dara Shikoh as emperor. We're always going to wonder, Indians in general, if Dara Shikoh had won the throne, how different things would be, because he was a very open-minded, secular, truly secular individual. So we're always going to wonder, Indians at least, what if he had won, and what if he had taken hold of power in India. Historians are always asking the question, what if, with this man? But we'll never know. And the other character I talked about was Sarmad, the Sufi, if you remember correctly. On the left here is Dara Shikoh meeting him. Yeah, he actually, had discourses with him and talked with him and stuff like that, and they were great friends. On the right, you can see him being executed on the orders of, Aurangzeb. There was a comment he said before he died. I couldn't remember what it was, but he said something to the effect that Muhammad's ascension to heaven, he said before he died that Muhammad did not go to heaven, but heaven came down to Muhammad, I think was his last words. Interesting, I thought to note that.
I thought it was the mountain.
I forget, it was about the night of ascension to heaven, the horse and everything, It was that story. But those were reportedly his last words. And like I said before,
the Miraj, the so-called.
Yes, Isra and Miraj. Yeah, correct. This, as I said before, Guru Tegh Bahadur, the 9th Guru Sikhs, was executed. And a little bit of background on this: basically, some Hindus came from Kashmir, and they were being persecuted because of Aurangzeb's policies. And the leader of the delegation, I believe his name was Kirparam, begged him for help. Basically, said, "Help us. We're being persecuted. Like they're forcing us to convert to Islam. Like, help us." So Guru Teg Bahadur agrees. He said that I will go to Delhi and talk to Aurangzeb, and if he and he made a promise with him that if he converts me, then you all will convert too. If he somehow convinces me or manages to change my mind and make me convert to Islam, then you will have to convert as well. And so they agreed. He's arrested on the way, and he's beheaded as a result. However, these are two pictures of like the execution. But before he's executed, he's made to watch his 3 disciples who accompanied him. By Mati Das here on the left, in the middle is by Diyala, and on the right is by Sati Das. By Mati Das is sawn in half while still alive. By Diyala is put in a boiling hot cauldron of water until he's died, so he's boiled to death. And by Sati Das is wrapped in cotton and set on fire. And Guru Teg Bahadur is made to watch all this. He does not convert to Islam. He does not change his views, and he is ordered to be, beheaded. But before that, he watches his 3 disciples in front of his eyes, executed mercilessly and ruthlessly.
I'm starting to side with Hamza Tsotos, who says beheading is something that you don't really feel. I mean, if I look at these things, my goodness.
Yeah, this is this is recorded in Sikh history as well as I found it, and also in the Persian sources as well. So yeah, I remember when I first read this story. I was about, I think, 10 or 11 years old, and man, it was a hard pill to digest, to say the least. But nonetheless, it's part of history, and Sikhs suffered a lot. I can make a whole presentation on the persecution of Sikhs, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. And like I said, Guru Teg Bahadur is beheaded. And these are 2 edicts, actual edicts, in their original Persian, written by Aurangzeb himself. One was a general order of the destruction of temples, and one was for the re-imposition of jizya. So for those people that say that it never happened, well, here's the actual manuscripts, and here's the actual translations. For the general order of the destruction of temples, and I quote, "The Lord Cherisher of the Faith learned that in the provinces of Tata, Multan, and especially of Benares, the Brahmin misbelievers used to teach their false books in their established schools, and their admirers and students, both Hindu and Muslim, used to come from great distances to these misguided men in order to acquire their vile learning. His Majesty, eager to establish Islam, issued orders to the governors of all the provinces to demolish the schools and temples of the infidels, and with the utmost urgency, put down the teaching and public practice of the religion of these unbelievers." And jizya again, as all the aims of the religious emperor were directed to the spreading the law of Islam and the overthrow of the practices of the infidels, he issued orders to the high Divani officers from Wednesday, April 2nd, 1679, in obedience with the Quranic injunction, till they pay the commutation money, jizya, with hand and humility, chapter 9, verse 29. And in agreement with the canonical tradition, jizya should be collected from the infidels, zimmis of the capital and the provinces. Many of the honest scholars of the time were appointed to discharge the work of collecting jizya. May God actuate him, Emperor Aurangzeb, to that which he loves and is pleased with, and make his future life better than the present. And this is a map, just a summary of what the Mughal Empire became, and eventually reached all of this down to the Deccan area. So basically almost all of India, except for the extremely southern portion, by the time of Aurangzeb's death, became into the hands of the Mughals. And this was at its zenith. You can see as it develops from Babur, then to Akbar, all the way here, and then Aurangzeb spreads for the south and reaches his zenith. And this is a picture of Aurangzeb reading a Qur'an. I saw a debate actually recently on Hindi news where a Muslim was claiming that he was secular. I thought that was quite funny, despite all the information to the contrary. He was devout. There's no doubt about that. And he was the one that got, in my view, Islam right, actually, in India. And he was the one that was able to implement it fully. From Aurangzeb's time onwards, the Mughal Empire, like I said before, just goes into a decline. I'm only going to mention two more phases and then come to my conclusion. One such name during the decline was Farrukh Seer. He ascended the throne in 1713 by the help of the Sayyid brothers. Keep that name in mind. These are two generals who became very influential after the death of Aurangzeb. They're going to be involved in putting people on the throne from the death of Aurangzeb to about 1722 or so, when the last of them is killed. So Farrukh Seer deposed his uncle Jahandar Shah and originally had him confined, but after 1 month after his accession, Farrukh Seer sent assassins and Jahandar Shah was strangled to death. Once again, inter-Muslim fighting and executions. Farrukh Seer's conflict with the Sikh rebellion led by Banda Singh is worthy of note. This is why I mentioned this, because of this uprising. The first time you're going to see the Sikhs go on the offensive here with this man called Banda Singh. Just a little background on this man. He was born in 1670 as Lachman Dev. He was an ascetic. He met the 10th Guru of Sikhism, Gobind Singh, who was Guru Tegh Bahadur, who I mentioned before. This is his son. He's the last Guru of Sikhism, Gobind Singh. He meets him in September 1708 and became his disciple. And according to Sikh historians, Banda Singh was commanded by Gobind Singh to take revenge against the Mughals. This same Guru, Gobind Singh, his father, like I said before, was beheaded by Aurangzeb. And during his lifetime, 2 of his sons were bricked alive by the Mughal governor of Sirhind. And his mother was also killed. I should have mentioned that. Apparently the story goes that when the 2 sons were bricked alive, she jumped off the fort where she was being kept. She was so distraught. And 2 of his other sons died while battling the Mughal forces. So Gobind Singh commands, Banda Singh to basically go and punish those who were responsible for these atrocities. So Banda Singh is successful. He captures many cities, including Sirhind, Samana, Sadora, and actually Lahore. So this guy is gaining territory. He's successful for quite some time, but in the tide turned when he was besieged at a fort called Gurdasnagar and put up resistance for 8 months. So he was besieged for 8 months, and they were able to hold out. But on December 7th of 1715, him and his remaining forces were captured. Some say that he surrendered. There's conflicting reports about that, but nonetheless, they were taken prisoner. Around 780 prisoners were taken along with Banda Singh, and hundreds of Sikh heads were put on spears, while others were placed in cartloads to terrify the population. Nothing new there. And Banda Singh and his forces were paraded around Delhi, confined to the Red Fort, where they were invited to accept Islam, naturally. And upon refusal, 106 were brought out daily to be executed in public, which lasted for about 7 days. And after 3 months of confinement, on June 9th, 1716, Banda Singh's son Ajay Singh was hacked to death by the executioner. His flesh was thrown into Banda Singh's face, and his liver shoved into his mouth. Banda Singh's eyes were then gouged out, his limbs chopped off one by one, and his flesh was torn off with red-hot pincers. These are Banda Singh's men being executed one by one. Here you see Farrukh Seer in the background enjoying his accomplishment, if you will. You can see that all these Sikhs that are chained up, waiting to be executed. And this is Banda Singh's execution, both these pictures on the left and right. On the right picture, this caption, it just basically says Banda Singh and his son being martyred. Is the translation. You can see his son being, hacked, and like I said before, his flesh was, put back into his face, and they shoved his son's liver into his mouth before they finished him off.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you know that it happened?
I read the actual Sikh accounts of his execution, and all of them were pretty much agreed on that point. I was not able to find any Persian contemporary historical accounts, but all the Sikh accounts I read were pretty much unanimous that this is how he died. The only discrepancy I found was some say that his son's heart was shoved into his mouth. Others said his liver. I don't think that.
That sounds very nasty.
Yeah, well, that's what but he actually set a precedent. The one thing that he did accomplish was that he set the foundation for the Sikh Empire to come, and the Sikhs would actually have the courage to muster up strength, and that was because of this man, because he was the first one to lead an offensive. um, against the Mughals and was able to gain territory. So, yes, he may have died cruelly, but he he was able to plant the seeds of a future Sikh empire. So, my salute to him. And Farouk's here. He's deposed because of his constant plotting and the Sayyid brothers. Like I said before, those two generals deposed him as emperor in February of 1719, and he's imprisoned at the Red Fort in Delhi. And on February 28th, he's blinded with needles at the orders of the Sayyid brothers. And a couple months later, he's strangled to death, and his first cousin ascends the throne. So, yeah, these emperors do not meet very kind ends. And I thought I'd just include that in there. And so the empire is crumbling, and Ahmad Shah Durrani, who's the founder of the Durrani Empire, invades India 7 times during this period. So it's crumbling. They're losing territory. Rebellions are breaking out.
What was Durrani?
He was in modern day. He was founder of the Durrani Empire, which is in Afghanistan and Iran, I believe, in present day.
Religion-wise, which god was with him?
Allah, of course.
He was also a Muslim.
Yes, Ahmad Shah Durrani. He's called Ahmad Shah Abd Ali, but we call him that, Ahmad Shah Abd Ali, but his real name is Durrani, actually, because he's founder of this empire called the Durrani Empire.
So what you are saying, there was one initial, let's say, conversion drive, which saw the establishment of Islam, and then the subsequent 582 times, this was just internal power fighting.
Exactly, yeah. And as the empire is crumbling, he takes advantage because he wants to obviously expand his empire. And much like in the second, bullet that I have, much like Ghaznavi and Ghori, his goals of invasion are plunder, enslavement, and political hegemony of Islam. So similar to those guys.
TJ, hang on. If every one of those plundered and all that stuff, how many times did God get a 20% share of what was being plundered? I mean, this must be the richest God of them all.
Yeah, must be. Has to be. Has to be, right? Has to be, because it is the amount of riches and slaves taking everything. It's just unparalleled.
This reminds me of a restaurant table which you are able to sell 50 times in one evening, and you always get some money from each of the 50 times that you sell one restaurant table in one night.
I mean, they're just so greedy, and they're doing it all in the name of religion because they're allowed to, because they're infidels.
Well, this is so fucking unbelievable. I mean, and it makes me so sad to think that these are individuals. Okay, this has nothing to do with Islam anymore. This is just personal warmongering, power-hungry assholes.
Well, that's what you think, but if I can get to this next slide, this man, Shah Waliullah, who's an Islamic scholar, invites him to come. This guy's a local Muslim.
Now prove me wrong exactly on the next slide. Great.
Exactly. And he writes him a letter because he sees that the empire is crumbling. Indians are getting their territory back. He writes to Ahmad Shah. He says, and I quote, "All the control of power is with the Hindus because they are the people who are industrious and adaptable. Riches and prosperities are theirs, while Muslims have nothing but poverty and misery. At this juncture, you are the only person who has the initiative, the foresight, the power and capability to defeat the enemy and free the Muslims from the clutches of the infidels. God forbid if their domination continues. Muslims will even forget Islam and become indistinguishable from the non-Muslims." And he further writes, "We beseech you in the name of the Prophet to fight a jihad against the infidels of this region." And in a side note, Shah Waliullah, his father, was on the committee for the Fatwa Alamgiri, as I said before, and his grandfather helped Aurangzeb obtain the throne. So, rich family background. And now he's inviting somebody else to come in and rape India again, basically.
Well, come on, the Queen came along, didn't she?
I guess so. I guess I'm just going to finish off with this point. There was a great massacre of Sikhs that took place on February 5th during his 6th invasion. And roughly 25,000 to 30,000 Sikhs were killed in this great massacre. And you can see them trampling on the heads and the bodies here. Between 25 and 30,000 Sikhs were killed in this great massacre because the Sikhs had put up, resistance, in the Punjab. And also on his way back from this, I believe that he stopped at the holy shrine called the Golden Temple, and bombed and fired upon the temple and slit cows and put them in the sacred tank just to humiliate them. So, and I could get to, Emmett Shaw all I want, but, that's just the gist of him. I didn't really want to get into every single invasion and all that stuff, just to give you the gist of his stuff. And the crumbling of the Mughal Empire, Bahadur Shah Zafar is the last one. He's the last emperor, and he really had no interest in imperialism or politics. I mean, his empire had been reduced to the area of Delhi, basically. That's how much they had lost, and the British were coming in at this time. And he's mainly, remembered as a poet. His poetry is still sung today, actually. And after the British put down the Indian Rebellion of 1857, Zafar was exiled by the British to Rangoon in Burma, present-day Myanmar, in 1858, and the Mughal Empire was officially over, and the British Raj was born. And the British actually, threw off, Muslim rule, which is to their credit. But I can get into the thing about the British Raj, but I'm not going to do that. That was the only positive thing to come from British. I would say one of the few things positive to come from the British rule. They were able to throw off this whole system of discrimination and taxation and humiliation, destruction of temples, and all that stuff. And Zafar dies in Rangoon on November 7th, 1862. This is him being arrested by the British, actually, right here. This is the official end of the Mughal Empire right here in this painting, in this drawing. He was an old man at this time and really held no power, really. It was, at that time, the Mughal Empire just became a symbol of what once was, actually. And this is an actual picture of him. This is probably the only picture of a Mughal emperor that's ever come into play, and he was the last one. This is him before he was exiled to Rangoon. This is believed taken in Delhi, and this is before he was exiled. And just a summary. Just to drive this point home, I guess, to get to the devastation point. Fernand Braudel, in his work History of Civilizations, writes that Islamic rule in India was as a colonial experiment, was extremely violent. The Muslims could not rule the country except by systematic terror. Cruelty was the norm. Burnings, summary executions, crucifixions, impalements, invented tortures. Hindu temples were destroyed to make way for mosques. On occasion, there were forced conversions. If ever there was an uprising, it was instantly and savagely repressed. Houses were burned, the countryside was laid to waste, men were slaughtered, and women taken as slaves. Conrad Elst, who is a hero in my view, if those that don't know should look at his work, he wrote a book called Negationism, Concealing the Record of Islam in India, where he actually goes into the breakdown. I was not able to obtain the book for this presentation. I wish I had, but it's available, and it's a worthwhile read.
But is he somebody that actually went there and got the original text?
I'm not sure, actually. I think he does go by original sources. He actually went to India and lived in India for a number of years. So I'm assuming yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because you have some people who go to the British Library and that's it.
Yeah. He actually lived there. He is originally from Belgium, and he's been doing this, writing books now for 26 years. So, great scholar, and he tells it like it is. And this is from his article called "Was There an Islamic Genocide of Hindus?" It's on his website. And small quote will suffice. Though all these small acts of terror added up to a death toll of genocidal proportions, no organized genocide of the Holocaust type took place. One constraint on Muslim zeal for holy war was the endemic inter-Muslim warfare and intrigue. No history of a royal house was bloodier than that of the Delhi Sultanate, as I said before. Another was the prevalence of the Hanafi school of Islamic law in India. This is the only among the 4 schools of Sunni Islam which allow pagans to subsist as zibbis, disempowered third-class citizens paying a special tax, with the favor of being tolerated. The other of the 3 schools ruled that pagans, as opposed to Christians and Jews, had to be given a choice between Islam and death. So to say that the rule was tolerant and that Hindus are still a majority, okay, but it wasn't because of tolerance. It was because of the Hanafi school being prevalent in India. Had any one of those 3 other schools been in power, there would have been, God knows, how many more.
That's why you mentioned in the beginning to take note of it. Okay.
Exactly. And conclusion, K.S. Lal, in his book, The Growth of the Muslim Population in the Middle of India, states that from the year 1000, so basically Mehmed Ghaznavi, to 1525, so basically until the end of the Delhi Sultanate, that 60 to 80 million Hindus died as a result of the Islamic invasion of India. 2 million alone were killed during Mamluk Ghaznavi's invasion. And Aurangzeb is said to be responsible for the genocide of 4.6 million Hindus. Last but not least, Francois Gautier, who's another historian. He's written books. He's lived in India. He actually married an Indian woman and lives in India today, actually. He's actually French. Great man. You should look up his work. His videos are on YouTube. He tells the truth. He set up the first museum where I got a lot of these pictures from. It's on, if you go to fact-india.com, he has exhibitions upon exhibitions dedicated to this. Not only the Islamic invasion, but also the partition of India, the genocide that happened in Bangladesh against Hindus, and Kashmir as well. He has multiple exhibitions. Just go to fact-india.com. And he says, let it be said right away, the massacres perpetrated by Muslims in India are unparalleled in history, bigger than the Holocaust of the Jews by the Nazis, or the massacre of the Armenians by the Turks, more extensive than even the slaughter of the South American native populations by the invading Spanish and Portuguese. All in all, if we take the beginning invasions all the way to the partition and also to the genocide of Bangladesh, that total number comes over 100 million Hindus slaughtered. It's just, this is the last slide. This is the picture to sum it all up. The biggest genocide in human history. People think it happened in Nazi Germany, but it was in South Asia. Grand total 80 million. In my motherland.
Amazing.
Thanks for your time, guys. Any questions, any comments, any criticisms or anything?
So I'd actually have something. I uploaded part 1, and I get a few Sikhs that say, "Why did he leave Sikhism?" And this seems like the Hindu fascism point of view.
I hate that, man. Sikhs have such an anti-Hindu mentality. It pisses me off. Oh. And I keep saying this. The term Hindu refers to a cultural and historical history. If you consider yourself indigenous to the Indian subcontinent, you are a Hindu. So it's not in a religious sense. It's in a historical, geographical, and cultural sense. And unfortunately, Sikhs have a lot of anti-Hindu mentality. They treat Hindus like Jews, basically. That they're always scheming, they're always against Sikhs, and blah, blah, blah. But when you mention those names, because Sikhism started in the late 1400s, and before that, there was really heroic Hindu resistance. And they don't even recognize it. They just think, oh, the Sikhs put up the most, and that's it. That's not true. It's appalling behavior. That's also one of the reasons.
What about that? I got a comment about you saying that you get. I think he tried to say that what you were trying to say was that Sikhs go around killing people that eat meat. I think it was when we were talking about the Khalistan or something like that. In a perfect Khalistan, would that happen, or was it I was just making shit up?
Oh my God! Yeah, just like I said before, that's a Pakistani-funded movement. It's just it's a waste of time. Sikhs need to consider themselves as indigenous people to the land of the subcontinent, and if they don't do that, then they'll always be considered as outsiders. And it's sad that a lot of Sikh separatism is out there, and that's also one of the reasons why I left Sikhism, was that I recognize the contribution of India. India taught us how to count. India created the zero. Mathematics, the first atomic theory was out of India. Sanskrit is probably the oldest language in the world, etc., etc., etc. India's accomplishments, and I'm consider myself as part of that heritage. And it's sad that Sikhs have this separatist mindset. Really is sad. That's also one of the reasons, like I said before I left, I just couldn't take that anti-Hindu bashing anymore. I'm thankful that India is a majority Hindu country. That's the reason why it's secular. That's why it is a constitutional republic. That's why it actually has a rule of law and a system that works, unlike its neighbors, aka Pakistan. So we should be thankful that India is a majority Hindu country, and that Hindu culture is still ingrained, and we never really lost it, despite all these devastations. It's just sad that Sikhs look upon themselves as the only ones who defended India, which is not true. so many Hindu kings and even Hindu women who took up a sword against these invaders, and their contributions are not even recognized. Sad, really. Sad. So yeah, whoever said that, introverted, tell them to go fact check their history. Really, before they open their mouth and sound so freaking ignorant.
Yeah, one thing I noticed though is that the Sikhs were fighting amongst themselves regarding the history. So I see there's some, tension and bigotry among themselves. Like this one Sikh guy was telling me, well, that Sikh doesn't know the history, blah blah blah. So it was confusing.
Yeah, it's you just. I mean, everything. A lot of Sikh history is like Sikhs are the victims, and that they're never the aggressors, that they can never do any wrong. So that's the problem. The victimhood mentality, that everything is done to us, and that we're always perpetual victims. So it's really sad, really. I think Sikhs need to wake up and pay homage to these Hindu rulers and Hindu kings that stood up. I did not have time to go through all of them, but just to name a few, Maharana Pratap, Shivaji, Rana Sanga, which I covered, and many more that probably I can't even name them all. Raja Dahir, like I went through last week, who fought Ben Qasim until the end. These names need to be known to the Sikh community, and they should be given proper respect. And it's sad, really. It's really sad.
Can we talk for the next video? Can we talk about censorship and like Aveyron and ISIS accounts or something like that? Because I found like a load of ISIS accounts, and I've just counted up all the subscriber count.
What, are you volunteering a topic for next week?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can make it like a real, what TJ has done now, not like saying, well, it's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Just bring up the facts and bring them down and see if you can put it together, because that is brilliant. I mean, I'd love for more people to come up and bring up topics. Absolutely. So should I take you down as a volunteer for next week then?
I don't know. I've got a load of exams. Might have to not do it, but I mean, I was just talking about showing you all the YouTube accounts and stuff like that.
Okay, do you want to do this next week, or do you want to postpone it, or what should I do now? Because at the moment I'm still overwhelmed with what TJ has done. I mean, the amount of work that he's put into that is absolutely stunning. Now, are you saying that you want to do something similar next week?
No, not really, but I'll just do like the 15 minutes talking about
next week. Okay, then I'll do that. Absolutely. All right, then, TJ, is there anything, a summary from the summary, or how much time did you take to look into all these texts now, into all the sources?
Man, it took me about a week total to get through everything, to make this presentation, to double check and fact check. About a week. First 2 days for initial research, then got into the sources during the middle of that period, and then was able to put it all down on that PowerPoint. Yeah, about a week. Yeah, a solid week. It's a lot, man. It's, I could have gone into, partition of India and the, genocide in, Bangladesh against Hindus and all that stuff, but I didn't do that. My focus was on when Islam had the power, and hopefully I did a convincing job to show that this should be. I mean, if I had any closing remarks, it would be this: to recognize this as a genocide, as a Holocaust, probably the greatest Holocaust in human history, and to recognize it and give it its acknowledgement and put it in textbooks. Nobody talks about this at all. People think that there was some sort of syncretic Islam, Hinduism fusion of some kind, when that wasn't the case. It was not the case. Hindus had a struggle for their very lives, and India is still majority Hindu, and I don't think any other country can say that they retained the majority population once Islam came, except for India.
Yeah, but
Really.
why do you still get Muslims and Islam in India?
I think that nowadays, if you look at it, right, the Muslim population went up from after partition from 60 million to now it's like over like 100 million. So India has never treated Muslims badly. The indigenous people have never treated them badly. Indeed, there have been riots and individual cases. There's never been a systematic suppression of them. So
Okay, but why has it never been purged then?
I just think, honestly, you're talking about the Hindus, right? Or you're talking about the Muslims?
Why was Islam never like totally abolished in India?
I just think the Hindus are too nice.
But
Honestly.
come on, they've just been screwed over for 1,000 years, well, almost. And come on, I don't quite get it. How come the people go on tolerating something which has violated them for so many centuries?
I just think Hindus, it's part of their culture. They're just so welcoming, they're so inclusive.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know, and that's worked to our advantage when it came to the Jews, like Zoroastrians. And
I thought the Europeans were politically correct.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and this misconception exists also because of our founder Nehru. He basically rewrote history. If I don't want to get into a too long, conversation, but he, in his book called, I believe, The Discovery of India, he said that Mahmud Ghaznavi was a soldier, a brilliant soldier.
Wow. I just hope in 100 years we will not have a history lesson like this and there's going to be some show saying when Merkel invited Islam into Europe and Muslims took over. Yes. All right, TJ, thanks again. Jesus, he's already left. That was quick. So it was probably way past his... Oh, no, he's still going for a barbecue now. Okay. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, anybody else volunteer any comments and any topics for next week? And this is me, and this is not the slave driver, this is just me, the polite moderator, asking people if they want to contribute something. Nobody wants. Okay, so I'm going to have Walid next week giving us a short introduction into camouflage and deception of Daesh and ISIS. And I guess after this, wow, I think I'll actually listen to this again and go through this. And I think I will get the slides from TJ so that I can refer to them later on, because there's so much work that has gone into it. All right, then, oh shit, I forgot the hadith of the week because I forgot to feed Ali. And Ike doesn't do anything out of his own, so I need to feed him. And if I don't, let me quickly find one. Here we go. So this is Sahih Muslim, Book 19, 4325. It is narrated on the authority of Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah caused the date palms of Banu Nadir to be cut down and burnt. It is in this connection that Hassan the poet said it was easy for the nobles of the Quraysh to ban, to burn whoever whose sparks were flying in all directions. In the same connection was revealed the Quranic verse, whatever trees you have cut down or left standing on their trunks. So it's quite funny when you go and you read the claims by Muslims who say that Muhammad never even hurt a tree. So, what, Ike, you have a Muslim girl takes selfie, Muslim girl goes viral, Muslim girl hates Jews, Muslim deletes Twitter. Okay. What, you have it? Did I give you a hadith this week? Okay, go for it. Sahih Bukhari, Book 4, Chapter 53, Hadith 392. While we were in the mosque, the Prophet came out and said, "Let us go to the Jews." We went out till we reached Baytul Midras. He said to them, "If you embrace Islam, you will be safe. You should know that the earth belongs to Allah and His Apostle, and I want to expel you from this land. So, If anyone amongst you owns a property, he is permitted to sell it. Otherwise, you should know that the earth belongs to Allah and His Apostle. I didn't know that you redid this one. This is very nice. And there is no, what you would call it, copyright issue, because this is a photo that I took of this dilapidated old mosque. This mosque actually exists. It's in the middle of the desert. It was probably, I don't know, some point where workers or somebody convened. I can't remember where this actually was. All right, there you go. I'm very proud of this photo, absolutely. I think I deserve it, and since I don't praise anybody except TJ and myself, there you go. Thanks, guys. We shall see you next week, and if anybody has a topic, if anybody wants to go and present anything, please do. Don't let anything and anybody stop you, and we shall see you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.